Welcome to the Power 365 show. Today's guest is a Microsoft employee working in Canada. I've known him for a few years now, and I'm so proud to be part of his journey, and I love the way he tells it. And yeah, you read the title of this episode right, but you'll have to listen to see what I mean. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Ottawa, Canada. He's a technical specialist at Microsoft. He's passionate about finding technology solutions that really streamline and automate business processes while delivering a great user experience. He's lead at the Ottawa chapter of the Dynamics 365 user group. You can follow him on Twitter at Todd J. Mercer or check out his website, toddjmercer.com. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you on. We've had a lot of conversations over the past couple of years, and I've watched you transition your career, from customer side into Microsoft, and it'll be good to unpack that in a moment. But before we get there, there'll be folks wondering where you're from, who's your family, what food do you enjoy, and what do you do for fun. So I'll let you open with those.
Sure. So right now I'm living in Ottawa, Canada. I've been here pushing on there 20 years with a brief break of living in Montreal for a few years. I originally grew up in a very small town in Newfoundland, though, so my heritage and home and heart is really in Newfoundland. Family-wise, I got two small daughters, 8 and 5, so they occupy 99% of my time when I'm not working. Mm-hmm. So that's always a lot of fun. So a lot of my fun right now is driven around, I would say, tea parties and doll houses and activities with the girls just to keep them entertained. And when I do get some time myself, it's either reading. I enjoy kind of reading quite a bit, and I've recently started to play curling again. So I've been getting out Saturday nights and throwing a few rocks around.
Yeah. And that's all on ice, right?
That's all on ice. Yeah, it's a fantastic sport where you yell at your teammates consistently, and you hurl 40-pound rocks of granite up and down the ice. Wow!
Tell us about gardening though, because I know you're a bit of a gardener.
Yeah, I inherited the green thumb from my father and my grandfather. They always had gardens growing up, and there was always something to do in the garden or the greenhouse. So. When the kids got old enough, I just started doing the same thing with them, just to introduce them to the idea that they can grow something and see it grow and then harvest it. So, yeah, I spent this year, we had strawberries, tomatoes, carrots and sweet peas, garlic, and blueberries was the other challenge this year, nice. Which was, takes a while because we got a lot of rabbits running in our backyard this spring. So we actually had a pair of rabbits decided that our backyard was going to be home for their young ones. So we had, at one point we had about 9 rabbits kind of nesting in the backyard. And they were all just really tiny bunnies. And so the kids loved it because they would go out in the backyard and see all these little bunnies running around. But then they discovered the blueberry and strawberry plants. And that was kind of the end of that season. Yeah. They had quite the buffet, and then that was the end of blueberry season.
Wow. So interesting you say that is that the stats show that if you can see 9 rabbits, it's a 1-to-5 ratio. There's 5 that you're not seeing for every rabbit you see that are coming out at night and things like that. And like I got a rabbit problem myself. In fact, I've just this week ordered 310 meters of rabbit fence to be installed right around my property because I've just planted blueberries. I've just got black currants and red currants, gooseberries, and I've also done a lot of native planting, and they're just shaving everything off down to ground level. It's just so frustrating.
Yep, I've had it a few times. I think in the spring of the year, I went back to the nursery at least 3 or 4 times to buy new blueberry plants to plant because I come out in the morning and it's just, it's about a 1-inch stub left growing.
Yeah. Well, we've been a couple of weeks into getting strawberries at the moment, and then today went out, and the first time the strawberries are definitely been attacked by birds. You can see this distinctive, they eat them quite differently than other animals, and so, it'll be off to the hardware store to get some bird netting.
Yep.
Now put over them to keep them safe.
We had it in our garden all summer too.
Yeah, painful. But it is nice being able to go out to your garden each morning and get fresh fruit, produce, vegetables, and eat them that day. Only harvest what you need. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I said the big thing for us was just to get the kids to have that experience. So my oldest one actually, in the spring of the year, she took seeds from a tomato that we were having in the salad, and she wanted to plant them. So we went and got dirt in the spring of the year. We planted them.
Mm-hmm.
She got them to grow, and so in the pot, and then we got them into the planter box outside.
Yeah.
So by midsummer, her plant was in full bloom with all the flowers, and she got to pick her tomatoes from her plant that she grew from the seed.
Isn't that a great experience?
Oh, I think it's really good. And I find the irony is with the plants in the garden, the kids are more inclined to eat something they can see and pick than if I brought it in from the grocery store.
Yeah, interesting. Tell us about your journey to ultimately, working with the Power Platform now. How did you get into technology? How did you, steer your career ultimately to be part of the Microsoft Business Applications ecosystem?
I mean, I was always, from a young age, I was always about the technology. I kind of got hooked on it pretty early. In the early days, and I knew that was going to be where I was going to go. I just didn't know what it was going to be. So I had been a developer for a number of years with this company here in Ottawa in the financial services industry. And one year was decided that we needed the new CRM system, and they landed and went through an RFP process, landed on Dynamics, and this was back in 2011. So Dynamics was the winner, and my boss at the time came over, and back in the time when you can put software on a CD, I kind of dropped the CDs off on my desk and says, get it installed and learn it. And that was my introduction to Dynamics. So then it was, pop the CD and you're looking at the administration guide and a few other documents that come included. And
that was, you had to build your SQL server up first and your Exchange server, mail and all those kind of things, right?
Yep. So then it was all this on-prem installation and getting it deployed and getting engaged. So that was we ended up working with a partner at the time, and that was really the start of kind of really getting thrown into the deep end. But during that time, I discovered MVPs. That was the time when we were searching for answers, pretty frantically, trying to get up to speed. I didn't really understand or knew what an MVP in the Microsoft community was at the time. And then there was a book that came out that got written by the MVPs. I think it was the name just escaped me.
The Field Guide.
It was the Field Guide. I think it was the original one. Yeah.
The original. Around 2012, it came out.
Right. So I remember owning that and reading that kind of cover to cover to going through it, because I was like, this is finally something that was making a little bit more sense than the administrative guide and the PDF. And then it got a little more discovered into kind of what MVPs were, then tracked down all the blogs and started following them and getting more engaged. And then I got introduced to Convergence. So I made the request to go, made my pitch. I'm like, I think this would be really valuable. And I think from then on, I've been hooked. I think getting there and seeing the community at really vibrant. And at the time that was in New Orleans, the first Convergence I went to, which was not too bad for the first time traveling in a while and getting to go to a conference. But then it was like, I remember I met, I think it was Donna Edwards at the time. And I had followed a lot of what she was working on, because she was spending a lot of time talking about the Outlook client and things of that nature. And we were heavily deploying that Outlook client. And I remember meeting Donna. I was thinking, it's like meeting an all-star. I was so starstruck, right? And then you start meeting other MVPs, and you realize that they're just like me. They're just really engaged with the technology, and they really want to kind of see how things work and really open and answering questions. So I was hooked from then. At that point. And then I ended up meeting, I think that was the same year I met Tony Stein, who at the time was kind of running CRMEG.
That's right.
Joined that, and then started getting really engaged on the forums. So that really kicked off my whole Dynamics career, and then getting engaged on the community. From there, it Yeah. So from then on, I just kept getting more and more engaged with the community and helping out, doing presentations. And then
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of come up with a goal to myself there, summer 2016, I guess, time frame. I'm like, I really want to go present, because I had attended a CRM user group conference. So Convergence was kind of over. There was no real replacement. So the next year for conferences,
That's
I'm
right.
like, I was going to go to user group, and I went to user group. I'm like, I want to present. I'm like, I want to contribute something back to the community. So at the time, Kaiser was actually put a post on the forums and asking for somebody to help out to do a webinar on solutions. And I'm like, I know solutions pretty well. So I put my hand up, and then, I connected with Kaiser. I had never met her before. We just connected through the forums, and then we connected up, and we built this little presentation on solutions to present to the UG originally as a webinar. And then we were like, well, we'll throw it in the possibility for Summit.
Yeah.
And got selected, and then we presented. And then doing that first presentation, and I was like, this is awesome. There was some excitement of kind of presenting and sharing what you know, but also helping other people kind of get through their hurdles. And it was one thing I learned after a couple of years of doing presentations at the user group and different sessions here in Ottawa and at Summit, is that you discover that your story actually has value to other people. You've likely solved problems that other people are running into. So sharing that with other people just became a way to kind of connect people. And then people really wanted to know how you solved that one particular thing that might have seemed trivial at the time, but it was a big item for someone else to kind of connect with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there, I kept growing with the community. We did a ton of study group sessions around certifications over the years, and then I saw a post from this guy I knew named Mark Smith, who was offering up this 90-day mentoring challenge. And I was sitting there thinking, and I remember saying to my wife, I'm like, I'm going to go do this, because I was approaching a spot in my career. I wasn't really sure what it was, but I was approaching a point where I knew I wanted to change, but I didn't really know what it was, or what to do next. At that point in time, I'd been with the company I've been with almost 15 years. So I'd kind of, that's all I knew for a while. In my head was kind of the financial services, but I knew Dynamics really well. I was really engaged in the community and doing all these presentations. And I was like, I remember saying to my wife, I'm going to do this because I don't know what's next. And Mark really knows the stuff. And I'm like, if I get a chance to be mentored by somebody, like Mark, then I'm like, maybe I'll come out with a better idea. So that's actually kind of how my journey to Microsoft kind of got started, because I wasn't really aware of what the roles were. And I remember in the early days of the conversation in the mentoring, you talked about a lot of the different roles and the different subsidiaries of Microsoft, and kind of getting to know who's local to you, right? And getting to know who's in those roles and making those connections. So that's really where my journey actually at Microsoft ended up starting, was kind of there at that point in time. And I didn't really know it then. It was just kind of like, oh, these are interesting roles.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's been in the business applications space for a while, I think we all have the idea of like working for Microsoft at some point. It's kind of like, we kind of say going to the mothership and joining up, and right. And for a while, I didn't really have it on my realm of possibility. It was just, I'm like, yeah, Microsoft would be really cool, but there's no roles in Ottawa that I could do.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit, and then I remember talking to Rick McCutcheon at User Group Summit one year, and we were talking. This was shortly after we'd done the mentoring sessions, and Rick and I were talking one day, and he kind of nudged me along. He's like, "So when are you gonna leave and go do something else?" And I was like, "Well," I said, when the right opportunity comes along, I will give it some consideration. Yeah. I wasn't really searching, but I said, if something comes knocking on my door, I'll go look. And so shortly after that year in User Group Summit, Rick pings me on LinkedIn, sends me a link. He's like, here you go. And it was a posting for the technical specialist role here in Ottawa. And the manager at the time was kind of had a little post saying, hey, if you know anybody who's looking, reach out. So I didn't think too much of it. I just read the posting and looked at it, and I was like, that seems interesting, technical specialist role. I mean, that's a big shift from what I was doing because I was in software delivery for a long time. And I closed it. I didn't think much of it. I said, okay, that's cool. And then shortly afterwards, and probably a week or two later, I remember getting an email from the recruiter from Microsoft. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. kind of then I was like a little starstruck, and they're like, hey, we looked at your profile, we think you'd be a good fit. So my wife was like, you have to go and see where it goes. And I was like, I'm not sure. I mean, technical sales, oh my God, it was really playing with my head of that shift in career mindset. So we went and we had a conversation, and then we started the interview process. So I started through this interview process, met with the managers. They're like, well, come in and give us a presentation. I was like, well, I can do that. I'm like, I've been doing presentations. So I built this presentation, I went in and did it. And, all the time, I remember doing the interview process, I kept telling myself, I'm like, I'm just having a conversation with some folks from Microsoft. I'm not, I was in a really good position at the time, really enjoying my role. I'm like, I'm not urgent to move. I'm like, I'm just going to go have a conversation and help me maintain my stress levels of acknowledging the simple fact that I'm interviewing for a role at Microsoft. So anyways, the interview process went really well. And this is kind of where the interesting plot twist in my role to Microsoft or my journey to Microsoft happens. I was actually successful in my first interview, and they made me an offer, and then I turned them down. So they made me the offer in it, and I took about 3 or 4 days to really, I'll say, do some soul searching and think about where was that something I wanted to do. And I was looking at where I was at the time in the company I was working for. We were just about to migrate from being on-prem to the cloud. So we're about to do this major migration. I had been nominated for an MVP at the time. I had just started my blog. I was getting engaged in community. And I was like, all these things were in momentum and going really well.
Yeah. And
I'm like, am I going to change gears? And then I came to this conclusion. I'm like, stick with what I have. And, I respectfully declined the first offer.
Yeah.
So about a month or two goes by, and then I suddenly have, I'll say buyer's remorse, but
yeah. That's a good phrase. Yeah.
The sudden realization, like, holy crap, what did I do? And then this is where the 90-day mentorship kind of comes back into play, because I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And, I decided that I'm like, I should have taken the role. The role may not open up between now and the next 2 to 3 years. It could be a while. So how do I keep my foot in the door? So it kind of comes back to some of that mentorship I remember going through about making those connections, staying connected with them, being persistent. So I connected with all the sales reps who I known there, and I was actually very transparent. I was like, I should have taken the role. It was a leap I should have taken. I said, if anything ever changes, would love to chat. And I stayed in touch with the sales reps. I stayed in touch with the hiring manager at the time. And anytime I was in Toronto, I would reach out and say, hey, we're in town for a conference. It'd be great to connect. Just to, I would say, stay relevant, but, stay connected as things go. And then as it would happen by Christmas of next year, Microsoft was expanding the number of technical specialist roles in Ottawa. So they had another opening.
But didn't you become an MVP at some point in all this?
Yeah, so that's the yeah. So everything kind of all happened at once. So Christmas of 2019, so just before the pandemic started. They reached out. They had a role. They thought of me, and we went through the steps in the process, in the interview process again. And by April, the paperwork was all done, and I was officially now part of Microsoft. But yeah, then by the nomination was kind of in flight, and right at that same time, so shortly after I joined Microsoft, I got the email saying, "Congratulations, you're an MVP." So you became an MVP theoretically after joining Microsoft. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
How's that?
Yeah. So I kind of jokingly say I'm the only negative count MVP, because I'm kind of I wasn't even a valid MVP at the time, I think, by definition. So I think I have to go into negative to qualify. But it was a really interesting journey. But eventually I got the role, and now I'm loving it.
Yeah, that's amazing. What an amazing story of taking control of your career, and then setting that you wanted to join Microsoft. You turned it down the first time, but it was still an ambition, and things lined up. It happened, it came about, and now you're a TS in there. So what's, my observations, and, I've been in the Microsoft ecosystem for 25 years now, probably more than that actually. And what I've noticed is that the folks joining Microsoft in the last 2 to 3 years, they are just can't get over how awesome the culture is inside Microsoft. Are you seeing that? What's your perception of what it's like working for the Big Blue?
It's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a combination of culture. I mean, everybody I've worked with or collaborated with are amazing. They're definitely, everybody's out to make sure that to be helpful. I mean, I think you heard the phrase kind of the one Microsoft, but it really is with the one Microsoft. We're all there to help each other, and there's a lot of collaboration and support. I mean, the culture has been amazing, and it's it's just been awesome. I would say it's everything that I thought it would be, or thought it could be, for that matter. But it's definitely been a fantastic culture. Definitely a lot of supportive collaboration, and people really will obviously go out of the way to help, which has been really fantastic.
One of the things when we chatted early on there was your concern around, going from being what we would say is customer side. So somebody that, had the technology inside their organization. You weren't working for a partner, and you were concerned about, and, you were concerned about whether the skills that you had would apply in the context of then working inside Microsoft.
Yep.
In hindsight, now you've made that transition, you took that leap and you transitioned. Were your worries, fears, etc. founded, or with all the great training Microsoft provides, how was that in hindsight? How was that? And I'm asking the question for folks that they will find themselves in similar situations and go, do I have the skills? There's that whole fear of, will I be found out? Am I not as good as what I think I am because I've been in this little ecosystem and this is going into a total different ecosystem? Will it translate my skills? How did that work out for you?
It's, I would say, a combination of two skill sets came together, I think, at the right time. I think, I would say in the earlier days, being more on that pro developer space, in my mind, it was more about what I could do technically. And it was can I write the code? Do I know how to build a plugin? Do I know how to do an integration? I think my engagement with the community, it was driven by passion to kind of share what I knew. But in a sense, I was building a new skill set of telling a story and building that presentation and coming up with an idea to kind of share how to share that information and to share that effectively with somebody who's going to listen in, and hopefully that they get that message. So, in some ways, I think those two skill sets for me at the time both came together really well at the right time when I needed them. And I think my concerns and fears were I think valid at the time, because it's switching from software delivery into a role that's kind of says pre-sales, and I had some trusted friends kind of, I shared them the job posting. I said, what do you think? And they're all like, it's not you. And they're like, oh, it's pre-sales. Are you sure you want to do sales? I'm like, I'm not sure that I want to do sales, but I think it's all about how you approach that role. And I think with the technical specialist role, I'm there to help drive that art of the possible, to tell that story, to help customers understand the value of the Power Platform or Dynamics in the first party apps. So that I get to pull from both skill sets of having the passion to want to present that story, and the technical experience of the platform can help them understand and feel a little more trusted that, well, I know what I'm talking about a little bit. It's not just saying, you can do this. I think I can back it up with, I have done this, and these are the best practices that I've been experiencing, and these are the things that I think you should think about, and be really transparent with them, and kind of build up that trust with them to help them feel like it's not someone who's kind of trying to say, well, this is just go do this part and you're on your own. I like to spend time with them to build that trust and that connection, so that they feel that they can come back to you with questions later on when they feel that they hit that hurdle. So I think that's really important. So I think for anyone who's thinking about it, I think if you're curious and you have the passion, then you can do the role. And I think that's your driver. If you have the passion to drive it, if you're curious, if you want to learn and kind of have that growth mindset, then you definitely can do that role.
I like it. Todd, as you know, we had a lot of other things that we were going to cover on this call, but we're coming up on time, and so I think we're gonna have to do a part 2, because I know that if I crack the lid on one of these other topics, we will consume another half hour or so. So I'm gonna, rather than run over, we'll put those aside. But boy, it's been so good talking to you, and I didn't expect you to, we hadn't discussed the 90-day mentoring challenge as being part of this podcast, but thanks so much for talking about it. And it's been, an absolute pleasure to see your journey. As always, you were referred, to come on the show by Beth Beryl. Was she on the same 90-day challenge as you? The same, because she's in Microsoft now, right? I
think Beth did it the year after I did it, the second round.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So she recommended you come on, and I always like to know, who do you recommend? Who else should I be talking to inside Microsoft? And that you've come across that's got a unique story that you think the community would benefit from.
Yeah, a colleague of mine actually, Aziz Amarali, fantastic guy. I've known for quite a while, even as a customer. He was part of kind of the Microsoft team helping us as a customer. And now I'm very proud to call him a colleague, and he's been with Microsoft for a long time, and he's a colleague of mine in the public sector. I think it'd be really good to have on the show. Nice.
Can you set up an intro? That would be awesome. And now,
absolutely,
quick fire question time.
I've listened to your show quite a bit, Mark. I'm getting a little nervous with a quick fire.
Okay, here you go. If you can have one fictional character as your friend, who would you choose and why?
Oh, I'm gonna go with Doctor Who, because he has a TARDIS who can travel in time.
Yeah. Very cool. Very good answer. Now, this one you might have to go right back into the archives of your mind to uncover. But describe the worst date you ever had. You don't have to say who the other party was. You can just give the context of the situation if you wish.
Now I'm thinking. I'm probably kind of boring. I didn't really date too much. I met my wife pretty early. We've been together almost 20 odd years.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
I'm gonna have to pass and ask for the next question.
You've been with your wife as long as my wife has been alive. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Last question. In what way do you feel your childhood was happier than perhaps others? I take a risk asking a question like this because not everyone has happy childhoods.
Yeah, I give my mom a lot of grief for this, but growing up in Newfoundland, we always joke that we'd always get like 2 months of good weather, and that is July and August, and then the rest of it is a 50-50 flip of it either being foggy or rainy or snow and sleet. So during the summer months, my mom was adamant that it was like, if the sun's out, you're outdoors, and didn't really care too much of what we were doing, but you're not allowed to stay in the house. So watching TV or video games was not an option for me. If the sun was out, you're outdoors, and that was the rule. So and my dad had a fur trapping line. So we were during the winter time, we were heavily outdoors, ice fishing, and anything to do with, we had, like I said, we had a fur trapping line, so we were dealing with that, ice fishing, camping, summertime, same thing, camping, fishing, outdoors. And where I grew up is a very small town on the east coast of Newfoundland, so we had a 10-mile stretch of sandy beach.
Wow.
So my childhood growing up was outdoors. And there's a lot of freedom to go and create and imagine ideas or games, or as you got older, it was enjoy the great outdoors from the camping and outdoorsmanship perspective. So
I love it. Todd, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. It's been great.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a Microsoft guest you'd like to see on the show, please message me on LinkedIn. Let me know who it is and why you think they'd be great for the show. If you want to support the show, go over to buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. I'd appreciate it. Anyhow, stay safe out there. Have a great rest of your week, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.